On this last video of the Movements of the Ocean lecture series, I'm going to talk about how humans can use all of this, and how actually we study all of these things. Now, one of the major things that we can actually use this for is to create energy. Because since the ocean water is moving, we can create hydroelectric power out of the water that's moving in the ocean. The water can actually be used to actually power turbines. So when that flood water is coming through in a tide, or when the ebb water is coming backwards, or when you have a strong current, like a breaker current, or the wave motion, all of these things can be captured to create electricity. And so we have what is called hydroelectric power by wave or tidal energy. And examples of these devices are seen here in the screen, and you can actually, basically, they all work at the same principle. Either the wave motion or the tidal or the current motion is being captured by turbines, which then are connected to a generator which produces electricity. And the potential for this is limitless. We can line up the entire coastline, especially in areas that seems extremely intense tidal variations, and very strong flood waters, very strong waves, very strong breaker currents, and we can maximize the production of these electricity. Why do we use this, you ask? Well, obviously because of the limitations is that you can only use it in coastal areas, although you can channel that energy through power lines to other areas as well. But the downside is that, of course, the technology is expensive and tides are not coming through all the time. You have a lot of slack water periods, and waves depend on the wind. So if you don't have a lot of wind, you're not going to get a lot of waves. So it can't be used everywhere. But it definitely has potential. And as oil resources run out, we have to start worrying about using these kinds of things. Another thing I want to talk about is how we actually study the movement of the oceans. Now, to study movement of the oceans, we have to basically measure how the water is either going up or down, or how the water is going from side to side, right? Basically. So we can do that with buoys, which can actually detect the sideways flow and the up and down wave motion as well, and also detect tides, because if you see if the ebb water or flood water is happening. And they can do that either by detecting if the distance from the satellite has changed, or the distance from the bottom transmitter has changed. So this can use satellites and other things like that. Radars, altimeters, or radiometers, which actually measure the distance from the satellite to the top of the wave. Also, you can use radars to measure the waves, because the radars will hit the crest of the wave, kind of like a sonar would in the middle of the water, bounce back from the crest and go towards the land, which tells the scientists how many waves are there and how often they're coming and how high these waves are. And those are called HF radars, okay? And scientists use that to measure waves and tides and things like that. And then you have this cool thing called drifters. Drifters are devices like boats, literally GPS-enabled rubber ducklings, or even drift ships, entire ships which have no power, they just drift with the currents. And you can use that to measure the flow of water around the oceans. And your textbook actually has a picture of an experiment done with a large number of floating rubber ducklings, which proved the North Atlantic Gyre. And it took like 18 months for the rubber ducklings to went back exactly where they started and complete the whole Gyre of the North Pacific. And considering that's how huge the Pacific is, that shows how fast the surface currents are moving around the ocean. And so these are some of the devices used by oceanographers to study the movements of the oceans and some of the potential for use of energy. And with that, we finished our Movements of the Ocean lecture series. From here we move on to plate tectonics. I hope you guys had fun with oceanography, and if you have any questions, of course, ask on the online collaborative environment and in class. I'll see you guys then. I hope this was helpful. Don't do anything that wouldn't make your mama proud.